Every once in a while, I will field questions from people in my audience, whether it be on social media or here on YouTube, and I'll have them to ask me questions related to technical analysis or price action, specifically as it relates to charts. And I take those questions and I create videos as an attempt to answer those questions and explain them in hopefully a way that can be digested appropriately. And so this is one of those questions. So the question that I'll be answering or attempting to answer in this video is, how do we know when the trend is changing? So hopefully I'll be able to get down to the bottom of that in a way that you guys will understand. Thank you for those of you that are watching this video. Please consider liking, subscribing, sharing, um, and for those of you that are returning visitors, I appreciate you guys and I'm grateful for your viewership, your continued viewership, and please share. And of course, if you guys have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comment section. I'll be glad to take a look at them and see if I can answer them or point you to some resources that can better help you. So, before I get into answering this question, make sure you check out chartsandpriceaction.com, where I partnered with By the Hood University and we dropped our newest course centered on price action. And this one goes deeper into price action and gives some tips on practical psychology that I've observed and noted over the years that I've been watching and learning price action. So be sure to check that out. It's a dope course, and I may be biased, but it really is a dope course. So be sure to check that out. Again, thanks for watching, and I'm gonna go ahead and talk about how to tell when the trend is changing. So I'm using United Health Group as an example because it just so happens to be a chart that I have never marked up. Of course, I'm familiar with the company, but again, I've never really gotten around to looking at the price action on this one. But anyway, let's start with determining what the trend is first of all. So when I look at, trying to figure out what the trend is for whatever chart that I'm looking at, I start with the macro trend because the macro trend is what matters the most. But it also depends on your time horizon, your perspective. So if you're looking at something like if I were looking to buy shares, of course, the macro trend is a big deal, and I want to take advantage of that macro trend, right? But if I'm trading, like day trading, then the macro trend, like on this yearly chart, matters less significantly. But either way, when you're trading, when you are buying shares, you want to make sure, let's say trading specifically, you want to make sure it's the best, in my opinion, it's the best strategy to not trade against the trend. So you want to know what the trend is. And in that, there are also micro trends. So you can have a trend, a bullish trend on one time frame and a completely bearish trend on another time frame. So those micro trends matter. So you can trade against the macro trend, but when it comes to that micro trend, especially if you're like day trading, going against that micro trend is it's challenging, and you shouldn't be looking to make it that difficult for yourself. It's much simpler to trade with the trend. That's why they say the trend is your friend. But anyway, let's talk about the macro trend for UNH. So as you can see, this is a yearly chart. Nice bullish trend, but I mean this angle is not sustainable. So I think that this thing may level out some over in the coming years, but we'll see. but bearish so far this year. But again, we're talking about trends, so I'm not going to get into a complete breakdown of this stock. But let's look at the monthly chart. So we'll just drill it down to the most recent 10 years on this monthly chart. And I'm going to mark a trend line where the trend is currently for this one. So this trend line, this white trend line, pretty much represents what the trend is on this stock right now. Obviously, it's bullish, right? So I'm just going to take another trend line and I'm going to mark the upside of that trend as well, which of course is bullish as well. Trading in a nice little bullish channel there. Um, and so what else can I say about this? Let's go to that's the macro trend. I'm sorry. Macro trend. So this is the overall trend on this stock is pretty bullish right now, even on this monthly chart. If we look at the weekly chart, let's see how the weekly chart looks. Same thing, trading in this nice channel on the weekly chart. Let's take a look at the 1 month daily chart. So this is exactly what I mean by you can have a bullish trend on one time frame and a bearish trend on another one. So if let's say I were looking to enter a trade, um, maybe a bullish trade here, in toward the end of April, right? And I'm looking at the macro trend, right? If I would have entered calls here or even bought shares here strictly based on the uh, macro trend, which is bullish, I would be losing out right now. You see what I mean? Especially with options, just buying calls. I would have been pillaged, pretty much, just pillaged my pockets for that position. So that's why it's important to look at different time frames and determine what your time horizon is for that trade and determine which trend matters most for that time frame. And then eventually you'll be able to put all of those time frames together and build a complete picture of the price action, and form many scenarios, many uh, opportunities based off of that. But that's not the point of this video. So I don't want to get off too far on a tangent. But on the daily chart over the most recent month, you can see that the trend has been very bearish. And actually, I need to make note of this reversal pattern developing here on the daily chart. But anyway, um, so yeah, it's important to pay attention to the different time frames and determine, what's the macro trend and then what are the micro trends depending on the time frame. So on this daily chart over the past month, the micro trend is bearish. So I wouldn't want to be in calls in this ticker over the past month because that's not what the trend is. I'd be trading against the trend at this point. Um, so let's talk. Matter of fact, let me just draw a trend line just to keep in sync with what I was doing on the previous time frame. So nice little bearish channel here on the monthly chart. I'm going to make this a different color because I like to color code my trend lines, again, as I've stated in multiple videos. All right, so that's the trend on the daily chart, bearish. But let's talk about how to tell when the trend may be changing. So you don't know that the trend is changed until you get confirmation, first of all. But let's go back to the monthly chart and look at that one. All right, so ignore the two trend lines that I just drew on the daily chart. But what I want you to pay attention to, oh, my app is acting a little funny. I want you to pay attention to this candle here on the monthly chart that printed for the month of April. What you have is a reversal candle right at right at resistance, right at a key level. Let's see. For some reason, my zoom out button is not working on this chart. Okay, so I'll have to do it kind of manually here, unfortunately. Okay. All right, that's better. So, notice that the price is on a nice little trajectory, bouncing off of the support here. But what we see here over the past few months is that the price keeps knocking up against resistance here. And while we still get, you know, some uh, kind of sort of some higher lows here, the price is still is not necessarily reaching higher highs, or the candles aren't necessarily closing at higher levels. So what I'm seeing here on the monthly chart is that it appears as though the price is starting to level out, and that this this reversal candle here is a pretty good signal that that is happening. And so far, this month of May being bearish is possibly confirming a reversal here, right? And it's not necessarily reversing as in the this is gonna just fall out of the sky and the macro trend is gonna become uh, bearish. This is just meaning that it may be shifting from a more bullish point of view to a more neutral point of view. So when I see this happening, I tend to just draw like a little rectangle to indicate, where I think the price could kind of oscillate for a little while. So right now, you see the price has been trading mostly between about 450 and about 520-ish, somewhere in there. So this is where, I think that the price may hang out for a little while. However, it's still in the midst of this bullish channel. So we don't necessarily know that the trend is changing until those key trend lines are being breached, right? So let's take a look at, let me pull up, uh, I guess maybe I'll pull up Bitcoin as an example. Um, okay, so, and sorry, my Bitcoin chart is all marked up, but obviously I watch Bitcoin quite a bit. But anyway, this purple trend line, this is a weekly chart for Bitcoin. This purple trend line shows the same thing that I showed you guys on the UNH chart. We got an ascending or bullish channel. And like I said, the trend isn't necessarily changing until those key levels are breached. So what you see here is during the week of April 11th, Bitcoin breached that the lower trend line of the bullish channel. So that's an alert that, hey, the trend may be changing on Bitcoin. So I knew for that next week to watch for Bitcoin bulls to try to push the price back up into this channel, in which they did, but they failed miserably. And the price ended up closing out below this bullish channel. So that let me know that this micro trend within the overall macro trend had shifted. So now we're in a bearish micro trend on Bitcoin, but it's still within the overall trend, or the I won't say overall, but the latest trend on Bitcoin, which has been pretty neutral. So Bitcoin has been ranging pretty much from since December 2020 to currently. And for this one, in my opinion, the trend doesn't necessarily change on Bitcoin, or it shifts into another cycle of the bearish cycle of of market structure. Um, when Bitcoin is able to hold below that 32 to $29,000 area. But even still, let's go ahead and look. Let's take a look at Bitcoin. Actually, I'll pull up a different Bitcoin chart. Um, Bitcoin. Let's look at Bitcoin on a different. Well, I've marked that up too. I'm trying to find a Bitcoin chart that I haven't messed with yet. All right, here we go. So let's look at Bitcoin's monthly chart, and we'll see if we'll mark Bitcoin's overall trend, which is bullish, of course. But there are some trend lines that it's important to mark to know whether those key levels on the monthly charts are being breached. So here's one. That's pretty much your big trend on Bitcoin, and it's got a ways away from that. Um, let's see. If we take a trend line from here to here, there's another one, right? So, and then if we take one from here to here, that's another one. And there we go. And let's do, actually, let's fix this one. We're going to come from here. We'll go over top of these here. And here's another one. So on a long-term point of view, um, we have this 25,000 area. So as you can see on the monthly chart, the trend, the big trend isn't broken yet, but you have other major trends on the monthly chart that are being broken on Bitcoin. But even still, the outlook sentiment on Bitcoin is pretty neutral. So, but like I said, we're getting toward the lower range. We're not even getting toward. We're in the lower range of that neutral sentiment. And I believe that once Bitcoin breaks below that area and holds it, then sentiment becomes really bearish on Bitcoin. So hopefully to answer you guys your question about that, how to tell when a trend is changing. So you draw your trend line and you watch for price to touch those areas. And when they touch those areas, you want them to either hold or fold. If they fold, then maybe sentiment is changing. Maybe the trend is changing. So keep that in mind. And there are only three trends in the market. You got a bullish trend, you got a sideways trend, and you got a bearish trend. That's it. And like I said, UNH on the long-term chart is just sideways. Bitcoin on a long-term chart is just sideways, and it's encroaching on that bearish trend territory. So hopefully that answer your question. I thank you for the question. I was happy to do the video, and hopefully you guys learned a little something. And I'll catch you guys in the next video.